Hey everyone, welcome back to Fika AI. I'm your host, Allison Cosette, and I'm really excited to be here today with Rusty Kumston, the CEO of Data Trails. Rusty, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Allison. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I am admittedly already in the fangirl of Data Trails as a product. So let me just say that up front. But I'd love for you to tell the folks watching a little bit about what is Data Trails. What do you folks do?
So Data Trails is solving one of the primary security issues with AI and what's safe, what's secure, what's trustworthy in AI solutions that are getting built. And the foundational layer of AI relies on data.
Yes.
And a long-lasting problem since the dawn of the internet has been the challenge of how we prove integrity and transparency in data that comes from different places and from different parties.
Yes.
So we can receive data. We know how to transmit data securely from one place to another, but we don't know if the data is real or fake. And that's not an unsolvable problem. Dealing with the issue of fake and fraud data has its origins going all the way back to web certificates 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And when it was easy to make fake and fraudulent Google certificates, and Google's email was all getting hacked and websites are getting redirected in different places, the industry got together and said, we're going to solve this problem. And the way they solved the problem was to put in place transparency technology. So today, the entire World Wide Web relies on transparency technology to authenticate and validate certificates, web certificates. So we solved it for web certificates, but we didn't solve it for the vast amount of other data that exists.
Yes.
And so Data Trails said, that's a problem we can solve. We need better technology, but the fundamental approach of being able to create and validate data through metadata, essentially record a certificate about data that other parties can then verify and validate, can apply to all of the AI data problems that we're experiencing today. We can eliminate the issues of fake data and fraudulent data. We can prove authenticity and bring safety and security and trust back to the internet that's now going to be AI powered and impacting all of our lives.
I think that was sort of what folks were hoping with the promise of blockchain initially, right? That's what they really wanted. They wanted that sort of transparency. So tell me a little bit about, given where we are right now, how Data Trails fits in there. And because what I've seen, I come from a data science background, so I came from a place where we were trained to have different levels of rigor about what is the data that we're putting into our models, where is it coming from, being really thoughtful at all of those steps in the ML AI lifecycle. And now that we have the ease of creating different types of applications, my opinion is that we're catching up a little bit on that rigor and that infrastructure. So tell me a little bit about what you're seeing in that regard as far as how quickly people are moving, and do you think that this is a blind spot for a lot of people?
Well, yes, I do think it's a blind spot in general. Let me start with this first. What we've been doing with a much broader community, working in the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, is to create open interoperable methods for proving the integrity and transparency of any type of data. Because it's an internet scale problem, and we need open interoperable methods for me to be able to determine, is Allison's data trustworthy? Can I prove it to myself?
Yes.
We need a foundational set of methods that are standards based. And so at the IETF, there's a community that got together a few years ago that's working on supply chain integrity, transparency, and trust.
Okay.
And methods have been defined and architecture has been defined that works within the constructs of the way PKI-based approaches, which is what powers the internet today, are enabled. So the extension to that is to create a method for being able to generate a receipt for any type of data transaction that occurs, and that receipt will prove who generated it, is it a valid structured piece of data, and it's going to be notarized that says, yep, this is all valid, and you can trust that this piece of data was created on this date on at this time by this party, and here's the envelope in which the data has been recorded. Now those receipts can be stored on a transparency service.
Right.
And the transparency service is what DataTrails builds. And your lead-in question to this was, all right, how does this all blockchain related, blah, blah, blah. So blockchain and transparency services have a lot in common. Mm-hmm. The underlying cryptography for how you build append-only tree structures that are cryptographically verifiable by third parties underpins both transparency services and blockchains.
Got it.
But for the transparency services, for the kinds of AI data applications that we're working in, there are a number of things about blockchain that you just don't need. You don't need smart contracts. You don't need the distributed consensus. You don't need digital wallets. You don't need some of the things that were put in place for doing monetary transactions for crypto assets.
Right.
We're talking about a different type of data asset.
It's just the verification aspect.
It's the verification aspect. So
Got it.
A lot of the cryptography is the same. In fact, it's all built on the same principles. And a transparency service is a place you would go to verify things about data.
Interesting.
Whereas some of the other, and blockchains are being used in some ways to do this type of thing, but from our own experience, we found that they were a bit heavy, slow, and expensive.
Too big a tool for the problem at hand.
Too big a tool, and you had to bring in some.
Things are happening here at the AI conference today.
Yeah. So DataTrails has built a new transparency ledger. We call it Forestry. It's open sourced, and people are able to use it to record their statements about data, and third parties can verify and validate that information in much the same way that other people would be able to distribute nodes and verify and validate a blockchain ledger.
Right. So
but it's super fast and super lightweight.
So how are people responding? Do you find that a lot of people recognize that this is an issue, or because it's an issue for me and it's something that's really close to my heart, but I don't hear it being talked about as much, this idea of data origination and data tracking within AI systems.
Yeah, so the SCIT community at the IETF has been working more in the shadows.
Yeah.
Brilliant people. We could probably do a lot better at marketing.
Well, it's a good thing you're here today, because now everybody can understand what the IETF is working on these days.
Yeah. The ledger technologies themselves and how they'll be applied, there's what I've been hearing from customers and from people who looked at it is, this is a great use case for blockchain, but we didn't want all that other stuff that came along with it. We're not transacting cryptocurrencies.
Right.
We just want to know what's happened to data and to be able to create audit trails that other parties can verify and validate, so that if I'm using Allison's data, I know what she's done with it, how it's evolved over time, and I can prove its usefulness before I go and apply it in any of my business applications.
Yeah. I mean, it has so many potential interesting applications. Everything from, we've got this retrieval augmented generation and being able to validate whether something is misinformation, or really being able to see, is there some intellectual property that's at issue? So there's so many interesting cases that people are struggling with right now that, if this was more pervasive, could solve a lot of that kind of issue, I think.
Yep, and that's the path that we're on. We've been introducing it and a lot this year, because the things have taken off thanks to AI, but it all roots back into what is fake and what's fraudulent data.
Right.
And AI, as much as it does for generating positive outcomes and benefits, has also proved to be prolific in generating fake and fraudulent data.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this increased need to be able to authenticate data is growing, and much like we've solved an identity problem. We know how to authenticate identities.
Right.
I can validate Allison, you can validate Rusty. We know how to do those things. We need to take that same kind of approach to the data.
Yeah.
And that's the Achilles heel in AI. If we can't verify and validate the data, it is too easy to poison it or to manipulate it in some ways that produces bad outcomes.
Right.
And what I describe to people, we're building responsible tech for responsible organizations.
Yes.
We can't prevent the bad guys from doing bad things, but we
Yep.
can make it really hard for them to put things into our lives and by data manipulation.
Exactly. I am so excited about what you guys are working on. So I'll be honest with you, I hadn't heard of the IETF before. Can you tell us who's involved in the IETF?
Oh, yeah. So the IETF is it's a global organization. Standards like HTTPS, TLS, SSL, all of the foundational internet properties that we use today and procedures and protocols have come from the IETF. And then there are organizations like NIST and ISO and a bunch of others.
That's where I've done my volunteer work, is with NIST as well.
Yeah. So they reference the foundational work coming out of the IETF.
Got it.
So today, NIST and the AI risk management framework and some of the other SB 800 stuff, they're referencing SCIT and the emerging methods that are coming out of this.
Got it.
So it building this thing all the way up so that it can become useful in a global environment, and we all need that.
And becomes the actual norm.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's what the IETF is working on.
Awesome. So as far as your own personal opinions, when you look forward to the future of AI, is there anything you're either really concerned about, really excited about, or really curious about?
I think the power that it's going to provide all of us to accelerate learning and to innovate and deliver new things is amazing. AI doing AI for AI is going to be a really interesting world, but it also exposes loads of security issues that we're not ready for.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that concerns me. I'm excited about it, but I know we've got to go rethink security. We've got to rethink safety, and it's technical innovation that can be done that will solve these problems. But the jumping in without security right away, that scares me. But like all major innovations, this is AI is no different than any other major innovation that's taking place. The last thing that gets dealt with is security.
Yes.
And so first it's been figuring out, hey, this stuff is amazing, how all the different ways we can use it. I need to combine it with this data, with this legacy data. I don't have enough data. So all of those problems are getting sorted out, and now security issues are starting to rise to the top. And fortunately, there was some forward-looking work being done at organizations like NIST, like ISO, like the IETF, who saw this coming and have been working to get ahead of it. And now we're not too far behind. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done to incorporate new technologies that can help us solve these issues and deal with the fake and fraudulent data problem that's growing rapidly.
So great. Two questions. One is, if folks want to know more about what you have been talking about today as far as the security of data origination and validation of that, where would be the best place for them to go and learn?
So
good starting point.
The IETF has a website about supply chain integrity, transparency, and trust.
Okay.
It's SCIT, SCITT.io.
Okay, great.
So that's a great place to go and learn about what the community is doing to solve transparency and trust issues. And then for a product that implements that, Data Trails.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. How do they find you, and how do they find Trails?
DataTrails.ai is where to go, and there's contact information there. There's other resources.
And they're a really great team. I've been fortunate to spend some time with them, so I'm a big fan. Rusty, thank you so much. I know I've learned a lot, and I'm sure the community has as well. So thank you for bringing these topics to us today.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Allison. It's wonderful to meet you.
All right, it was great to see you.
Yeah.
All right, Data Trails, Rusty Cumston.